The pen felt cold in my hand, heavy, like it weighed more than just plastic and ink. It felt like the fate of my life, my future, and my past, all rolled into one terrible moment. I was sitting at my parents' Sunday dinner table. The quiet was thick, thicker than the expensive wine in their glasses. Between the untouched plates of food sat 3 sheets of legal paper. Across the table, my parents sat with their arms crossed. My older brother, Miller, the golden child who had never earned a dime, just smirked. He was already spending the $4,000 a month that belonged to me. The document was a property transfer agreement. My signature was the only thing standing between him and the inheritance my grandmother specifically left to me. "Sign the papers, Ivy," my father said. His voice was flat, final. "Or pack your bags and leave this family forever." My name is Ivy Anderson. I'd just been given an ultimatum: surrender my inheritance or be completely cut off from the only family I had. Before I tell you what I did, hit subscribe, because what happened when I made my choice is going to show you exactly what happens when the quiet one finally stops being quiet. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 3 weeks earlier I'd found something in my grandmother's safe deposit box. A second will, one my parents had hidden for 5 years, and it was going to destroy everything they'd built their lives on. I chose the bags. I'm 28, a physical therapist, and I live a quiet, focused life in Charlotte, North Carolina. My older brother is Miller, 32, and he hasn't moved out of our parents' house since he graduated college with a 2.1 GPA. Our father, Vance, is an auto dealership manager, 58. Our mother, Jane, is a real estate agent, 56. We are, on paper, a middle-class suburban family. But I wasn't supposed to be the successful one. In the Anderson house, that role was reserved exclusively for Miller. He was the golden child. Star football player in high school, full-ride scholarship to UNC, the son my parents paraded around at every family gathering. I was the one they called our daughter who works hard, while Miller was our son with so much potential. Miller's potential, however, never materialized. He lost his scholarship sophomore year, moved home at 22, and 6 years later, he was still living in his childhood bedroom. No job, no prospects, just a Netflix subscription and my parents' unconditional support. Meanwhile, I quietly built my own life. I put myself through physical therapy school. I worked full-time, took every double shift at the hospital I could get, and completed my doctorate debt-free through sheer grinding determination. When I finally got my professional license, my parents' reaction was muted. "That's nice, honey," Mom said, barely looking up. "Miller's thinking about starting a business. Can you help him with the paperwork?" The sacrifices started early, and the pattern was always the same. My future was secondary to Miller's convenience. At 16, I saved $1,200 from a summer job for a laptop I needed for my AP classes. Miller needed new football equipment. My parents borrowed my entire savings. They promised to pay me back, but never did. "Miller's athletic future is more important," Dad declared. "You'll understand when you're older." I understood right then. I was disposable. At 19, I was working 2 jobs just to pay for community college tuition. Miller failed out of UNC. My parents asked if I could take a semester off to help cover his private school tuition for a fresh start. I took 3 semesters off. Miller dropped out of the private school after 1 year. I lost a year and a half of my life to a ghost of his potential. At 22, I was finally accepted into a competitive DPT program. Full tuition, $40,000 per year. I had saved $15,000. I applied for every scholarship under the sun, but I was still short. That Christmas, my grandmother, my mother's mom, pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Don't tell your parents, but I'm helping with your tuition." She paid $20,000 toward my first year. She was the only one who ever invested in me. The year I turned 23, my grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, 6 months to live. I moved into her house, took care of her while finishing my degree remotely. I changed her bandages, managed her medication, and sat with her through the bad nights. Miller visited twice. My parents came on weekends, always asking about her will. "You've secured your future, right?" Mom would whisper to Miller when they thought I couldn't hear them, always positioning me as the obstacle. In November, my grandmother died. I gave the eulogy, my voice shaking as I talked about the woman who'd believed in me when no one else did. After the service, the lawyer read the will. She had left me her rental property, a duplex in a nice Charlotte neighborhood. Tenants were in place, generating $4,000 monthly. My parents' faces went tight. Miller looked like he'd been slapped. "She left you the property?" Mom started, her voice a poisonous hiss. "That was supposed to—" She cut herself off. Supposed to what? Go to Miller? The grandson who visited twice during her final illness? The signs had always been there, a steady drip of financial and emotional neglect. Miller received expensive electronics and cash for birthdays. I received gift cards for practical things. The living room wall was a shrine to Miller's football career. My only childhood photo was tucked away in a dusty corner. Every dinner conversation was a status update on Miller's non-existent career. 2 months after my grandmother died, the conversation shifted to the property. "Miller could really use some extra income," Dad said casually. "Maybe he could manage the property for you, take a percentage." I said no, firmly. A month later, "Miller's starting a real estate business. Transfer the property to him as seed capital." I said no. The property was mine. Last month, "It's not fair that you got everything and Miller got nothing. Family should share." I said no, again. That's when the family meeting invitations started. They weren't asking anymore. They were demanding. They saw my boundaries not as respect, but as obstacles to their golden child's comfort. I thought standing my ground meant they'd eventually respect my boundaries. I didn't realize that to them, my boundaries were just obstacles, and they'd been planning how to remove those obstacles for months. I just didn't know they had already forged the documents to do it. Sunday, 6 p.m. I showed up at my parents' house with a decent bottle of Cabernet, clinging to the desperate hope that this dinner would be normal. I was wrong. The dining room table was set formally. The good china, the silver, cloth napkins, the kind of setup reserved for Christmas or when they were trying to impress a business associate. Miller was already seated, wearing a button-down shirt. Miller never wore button-downs. It was a costume. My parents greeted me with tight, unnatural smiles. "So glad you could make it," Mom said, her voice too bright. We sat. The food was passed. Small talk was attempted, but the tension was so thick I could practically chew it. Nobody was eating. Then, Dad cleared his throat. He set his fork down with a loud clink and pulled a manila folder from the chair beside him. "Ivy," he began, his tone formal, "we need to talk about grandmother's property." My stomach dropped. I knew this wasn't a talk. He opened the folder, revealing official-looking, typed legal documents. "We've been thinking," he continued, eyes flat. "It's not fair that Miller got nothing in the will. Grandmother was elderly, confused. She didn't mean to cut him out." "She wasn't confused," I countered, keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline rush. "She knew exactly what she was doing." Mom quickly jumped in, this sympathetic voice. "Honey, you have a good job. You don't need the rental income. Miller needs a fresh start, a foundation." "So give him money," I said. "Don't take mine." Miller finally spoke up, a condescending smirk on his face. "It's not taking, it's sharing, like family should." I looked at him. 32 years old, 6 years unemployed, still subsidized by the people sitting next to him, and he wanted the one thing I earned by taking care of the woman they had neglected. Dad slid the documents across the table right next to my wine glass. We've already had these drawn up, property transfer agreement, sign it, and this whole thing goes away. Miller gets the property, you keep your place in this family. I stared at the signature line. My name, Ivy Anderson, typed below it. And if I don't? I asked. Dad's face hardened, the mask of pleasant concern dropping entirely. Then pack your bags. You're not welcome here anymore. I left that dinner without signing. I drove home shaking, but my grandmother's words kept repeating in my head, a quiet mantra. Don't let them bully you. For the next few days, the pressure campaign was relentless. Monday, Mom called me selfish. Tuesday, Dad texted demanding I not disappoint them. Wednesday, Miller showed up at my apartment. Come on, Van, it's just a property. I need this. I told him to get a job like I did. He slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. But what I discovered Thursday night, when I finally pulled out that folder and read the documents they'd tried to make me sign, showed me this wasn't just about fairness. This was about erasing me from my grandmother's legacy entirely. I sat on my couch and forced myself to read the fine print. It was worse than I imagined. It wasn't a simple transfer. Page 3, buried under a paragraph of dense legalese, stated, transfer includes all property rights, past rental income held in escrow, and future revenue. Ivy Anderson relinquishes all claims to property originally designated in the last will and testament of Margaret Louise Hoffman. They weren't just asking for the property, they wanted the $60,000 in rental income I'd saved over the last 5 years. Everything. And then I saw the line that turned my blood cold. This transfer corrects an administrative error in the original will distribution. Administrative error? They were attempting to establish a paper trail suggesting my grandmother was incompetent or had made a mistake. I immediately called my friend Taylor, a sharp lawyer I'd known since college. I sent her photos of the pages. 20 minutes later, she called back, her voice tight. Ivy, if you sign this, you're not just giving up the house. You're agreeing your grandmother was incompetent. They're building a case to challenge the will retroactively. They'd have your signature as evidence. I'd almost signed away my grandmother's dignity and the foundation of her belief in me. Week 2 began with an escalation. The pressure campaign went public. Friday, my Aunt Sarah called. Ivy, honey, your parents are very upset. They said you inherited something that should have been shared. I explained the 5 years of taking care of grandmother, the property, the savings they were demanding. After a moment of silence, she just said, well, Miller does need help, and hung up. Saturday, my parents showed up at my apartment, the performance hitting maximum volume. Mom was crying, tears streaming down her face. We raised you better than this, she sobbed, to be so greedy. I am not being greedy, I told them, fighting to keep my own emotions in check. I am keeping what my grandmother left me. Dad delivered the final blow. You have 1 week, sign the papers, or we're done. No more family dinners, no more holidays. You will be completely cut off. They left me standing there, shaking, realizing they were serious about destroying me to save Miller. In week 3, the manipulation went viral. They started calling every extended family member, cousin Jennifer, Uncle Mike. Everyone got the same sanitized story. Ivy is being selfish. She refuses to help her struggling brother. Tuesday, Miller went to social media. His Facebook post dripped with feigned martyrdom. Sometimes family disappoints you. When people care more about money than blood, you find out who they really are. He got 20 comments of immediate support. Everyone believed them. Nobody asked my side. Then Friday happened. I got a call from the property management company. Someone had been calling, claiming to be the new owner, asking for access to tenant files and the bank account information. It was Miller. And that's when I realized they weren't waiting for my signature. They were going to take the property anyway. Saturday morning, Mom performed the next act. False hope. She called me, her voice soft and gentle. "Sweetie, can we talk? Just you and me?" We met at a coffee shop. She looked tired, vulnerable. "I'm sorry," she whispered, taking my hand. "We've been putting too much pressure on you. We're going to back off. The property is yours. We need to respect that." Relief washed over me. I actually thought I had won. "There's just one thing," she said, pulling back her hand. "Could you maybe hire Miller to do maintenance? Give him some work." It sounded reasonable. "I can talk to the property manager," I agreed. We hugged, and I left feeling lighter, believing that maybe, finally, my family had chosen me. Monday morning, the bank called. "Miss Anderson, we need to verify a large withdrawal from your rental income account." "What withdrawal?" $15,000, withdrawn Friday afternoon. We have documentation here showing joint account holder authorization. A Mr. Miller Anderson. I couldn't breathe. Miller is not on that account. According to our records, he was added Thursday. We have the paperwork with your signature. I drove to the bank. The account modification form was there. My name, my signature, perfectly forged. They had stolen $15,000 from the savings I'd accrued. The Saturday apology, the gentle voices. It was all a distraction so Miller could illegally gain access and loot the account. I immediately called Taylor and filed a police report. Then I called my mother. "You knew," I choked out, the rage overcoming the hurt. Saturday, that whole apology, you knew Miller was going to steal from me. "It's not stealing," she said, her voice now utterly cold. "It's taking what should have been his in the first place." "I'm filing charges," I said. "Do that, and you're dead to us. Completely." I hung up, hands shaking, the last vestiges of hope for my family dissolving into pure, righteous fury. I was leaving the police station when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Miss Anderson, this is Richard Kemp. I was your grandmother's attorney. I heard you're having some family difficulties regarding her estate. How did you—" "Your grandmother anticipated this might happen. She left something with me. Instructions to contact you if your family ever contested the will or tried to pressure you. I think we need to meet." Tuesday morning, I met Richard Kemp. His office was 20 floors above downtown Charlotte, all glass and polished wood. He was silver-haired, calm, and had the solid presence of a man who keeps big secrets. "Your grandmother, Margaret, was a remarkable woman," he said, ushering me toward a chair. "She knew your family well, better than they knew themselves." He pulled out a FIC file. 5 years ago, when she updated her will, she told me, "My daughter and her husband will try to take everything from Ivy. They'll pressure her, manipulate her, maybe even forge documents. I need you to protect her." My throat closed tight. She knew? She'd watched them prioritize Miller over you your whole life, taking your savings, making you work while he partied. She saw it all, Ivy, and she was furious. He opened the file. "This is a codicil to the first will. Your grandmother wrote it 3 months before she died, right after your parents started asking probing questions about the rental property." I leaned forward and read the clear, concise legal language. "Should any family member attempt to coerce, manipulate, or defraud Ivy Anderson regarding the property left to her, all remaining estate assets shall be distributed to Ivy immediately, and said family members shall be permanently excluded from any inheritance." "Remaining assets?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Richard smiled. "Your grandmother was very careful. The rental property wasn't her only holding. There's a trust, currently valued at $340,000. Stocks, bonds, a small commercial property she bought decades ago. She kept it separate, told absolutely no one." I was reeling. My parents don't know about the $340,000? They have no idea. The trust was designed to vest you at age 30, Or earlier, if they tried exactly what they're doing right now, forging documents, stealing money. Yes, I breathed, which means the codicil is now in effect. The moment they forged your signature and stole the $15,000, they triggered the clause. That trust becomes yours immediately. I sat back, the reality sinking in. My grandmother hadn't just given me an inheritance, she had built a fortress to protect me from beyond the grave. There's more, Richard said, sliding another document across the desk. Your grandmother kept records. Every time your parents took money from you, every time they prioritized Miller, the birthday money they borrowed, the college savings they reallocated, she documented everything. 20 years of financial abuse. Itemized, dated, proven. The documentation was a meticulous record of every single betrayal. He handed me a final, heavy envelope. She wrote you a letter. She asked me to give it to you when this moment came. I opened it. Her handwriting was shaky, but the message was clear. Dear Ivy, if you're reading this, they've done what I feared. They've tried to take from you again, to make you small. You don't owe them your future. You don't owe Miller a life he hasn't earned. I left you the trust because I know you'll use it to build a life free from their manipulation. Fight back, sweetheart. You're stronger than they ever let you believe. Tears streamed down my face. She hadn't just left me money, she had left me validation and a battle plan. I wiped my eyes and looked at Richard. The grief was gone, replaced with cold, surgical clarity. What do I do? I asked. We have 4 options. First, the police report for the forgery and theft, that's criminal. Second, we activate the codicil and transfer the $340,000 to you. Third, we file a restraining order if the harassment continues. And fourth? Richard's expression hardened, mirroring the iron I felt in my own chest. We go after them. Civil suit for the money they've stolen over 20 years. Your grandmother's documentation would support it. We make them pay back every single dollar. I thought about the years of being erased, the double shifts, the feeling of being perpetually invisible. I want all of it, I stated, the words final and unwavering. Richard nodded. Then let's begin. My mother once told me when I was 16 and crying about the savings they'd taken, good daughters sacrifice for family. I'd believed her, spent 12 years trying to be a good daughter. What she didn't know was that Grandma had spent those same 12 years building me an escape route. And the instructions she left, they weren't just about money. They were about making sure my parents faced exactly what they created. Wednesday morning, the planning began. Richard Kemp accompanied me to the police station to file the formal report. His steady presence lent institutional weight to my trembling anger. Detective Martinez, after reviewing the forged bank documents and the transaction records, was blunt. This is textbook forgery and theft. We'll need handwriting analysis, but this looks clear-cut. He assured me that if the analysis confirmed the forgery, they'd have enough to press charges within a week. Leaving that station, I felt something new. Hope. The cold, hard kind that comes from knowing the law is finally on your side. That afternoon, I met with my college friend, Taylor, at her law office. I hadn't realized she specialized in estate litigation, making her the perfect weapon. Richard sent me the full file, Taylor said, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and professional respect. Ivy, your grandmother was brilliant. This codicil is airtight. Your parents can't contest it. Even if they claim she was incompetent, no chance. She had 3 different doctors certify her mental competency the very day she signed it. She knew they'd try that angle. Taylor then spread out the financial documents Richard had provided. There's something else. Richard's documentation shows a clear pattern of financial exploitation. In North Carolina, you can sue family members for this. It's not just the $15,000 they stole last week. You mean go after them for the money they took over 20 years? All of it. The $1,200 you saved at 16, the $15,000 for Miller's failed tuition, everything. With interest. I quickly calculated the amounts. It was well over $50,000 in documented theft. Do we have irrefutable proof? I asked, needing absolute certainty. Taylor grinned. a sharp, lawyerly expression that made me feel entirely secure. Your grandmother kept copies of every check, every withdrawal. She even had you sign those little receipts when you were a kid, remember? Borrowed $500 from Miller's equipment. She kept everything. I remembered signing those slips, thinking they were formalities. She was building evidence, I realized, stunned. For 20 years, she built you a case, Ivy. Over the next week, we moved with surgical precision, hitting them on 4 legal fronts simultaneously. 1. Criminal charges. The bank's handwriting expert confirmed the forgery. Detective Martinez prepared the arrest warrants. 2. Civil suit. We filed for financial exploitation, demanding $52,000 in documented restitution plus interest, totaling $73,000. 3. Trust transfer. Richard filed the paperwork to activate the codicil. The $340,000 trust would be in my account within 30 days. 4. Restraining order. We filed one against all 3 family members after Miller, in a fit of desperation, showed up at my workplace demanding I drop the charges. Taylor quickly ran a title search and pulled my parents' public financial records. Their house, the one they'd lived in for 30 decades, had a second mortgage taken out 3 years prior for $150,000. Where did that money go? I asked. Taylor pointed to public records from an old bankruptcy filing, luxury purchases, multiple vacations, and large sums designated for Miller's phantom business investments. They've been broke for years, Ivy, Taylor explained. They're not just greedy, they're desperate. The $4,000 a month from the rental property wouldn't have just saved Miller, it would have saved them from financial ruin. Thursday, their lawyer called Taylor, attempting a weak surrender. My clients wish to settle. They'll return the $15,000 and your client drops all charges. No, Taylor shot back. Full restitution for 20 years, or we proceed. That's extortion. No, Taylor corrected. That's justice. The next day, Miller retaliated with the only weapon he had left, social media. He posted a vicious update. When someone files fake charges against family, you see who the real criminals are. #FamilyBetrayal. The comment section filled with sympathetic strangers who believed his lie. But what I discovered Saturday morning, when I finally went through my grandmother's full records, showed me the betrayal went even deeper, and it involved someone I never suspected. Richard called, his voice serious. We found something she marked, "Only show Ivy if necessary." I drove back to his office. He presented a folder containing emails between my mother and grandmother from 8 years ago. The correspondence was sickening. My mother, Jane. "Mom, you need to understand. Ivy doesn't need your money. Miller needs your support. He's struggling. The property should go to him. Change the will." My grandmother's clear response. "Miller is struggling because you've never made him stand on his own. Ivy works 3 jobs while you fund his lifestyle. The property goes to Ivy. Final decision." The emails escalated for months, culminating in my mother's ultimate threat. "If you leave everything to Ivy, don't expect me at your funeral." My grandmother's final reply, "Then I'll have one less disappointment to mourn." My mother had threatened to abandon her own mother's deathbed over money, yet still showed up to the funeral, performing the role of the grieving daughter while knowing she'd been permanently cut out. Monday morning, 2 days before the criminal hearing, Taylor called, her voice strained. "We have a massive problem. Your parents' lawyer filed a motion claiming your grandmother had early-stage dementia when she wrote the codicil. They have a doctor's statement from Dr. Harrison." Dr. Harrison. He had treated grandmother for years. If he testified that she was incompetent, it could invalidate the codicil, the $340,000 trust, and open the door for them to challenge the original will. Everything was slipping away. "Wait," I insisted, thinking fast. "Richard said she had 3 doctors certify her competency." "She did, but they're arguing those doctors didn't know about the dementia diagnosis." Then it hit me.
Dr. Harrison was one of the 3 who certified her competency. I remember signing him in as a visitor, but he was also her primary doctor." Taylor went silent. If he certified her competency and then turned around to say she was incompetent, that's professional fraud. "Call Richard now." We had found their Achilles heel. We had 72 hours to prove Dr. Harrison was lying. If we failed, the judge would invalidate the codicil, my parents would challenge the original will, and everything my grandmother built to protect me would disappear. And they'd walk away clean.
Wednesday morning, the first domino fell. I walked into the courthouse for the criminal hearing. My parents, Vance and Jane, sat across the aisle with Miller and their attorney. Mom refused to meet my eyes. Dad's face was a mask of cold fury. Miller, the perpetual slacker, scrolled on his phone, acting bored. The prosecutor opened simply. The defendants forged Miss Anderson's signature to access her bank account and withdrew $15,000 without authorization. He presented the forensic evidence, the bank records, and the handwriting expert's testimony. Miller's lawyer tried to dismiss it as a family dispute, claiming his clients believed they had permission. The judge leaned forward, his voice edged with disbelief. Permission to forge a signature? The prosecutor countered, stating the account was solely mine, and the defendant, Miller, was added using fraudulent documentation. After reviewing the evidence, the judge made his ruling. I'm finding probable cause. This proceeds to trial. The blood drained from Miller's face. The boredom vanished, replaced by sheer panic. Outside, their lawyer immediately cornered us. My clients are willing to settle, he said, trying to save them from a felony conviction. They'll pay back the money, plead to a misdemeanor, avoid jail time. I didn't hesitate. No, I said, my voice steady. This goes to trial. All of it. That afternoon, we filed the civil suit, $73,000 in restitution for 20 years of financial abuse. We itemized every stolen dollar, the $1,200 savings, the $15,000 tuition money, the $8,000 for Miller's phantom business, all documented by grandmother. We named all 3 of them, Vance, Jane, and Miller Anderson. The filing became public record. By the evening, Miller's Facebook was imploding. People who'd supported his family betrayal narrative were now asking, wait, they took money from you for 20 years? This says they stole your college savings? The narrative had flipped instantly. The financial truth was far uglier than my parents' polished lie. Thursday morning, the last defensive move they had was neutralized. Richard called with news about Dr. Harrison. I pulled Harrison's records, Richard said. The dementia diagnosis he claimed was from 6 months after your grandmother died. He backdated it. It was blatant, professional fraud. Richard reported him to the state medical board, and Harrison's testimony instantly became worthless. In fact, it confirmed my family's escalating desperation. The motion to invalidate the codicil was denied that afternoon, making the transfer of the $340,000 trust irreversible. Friday, my parents went nuclear. They filed their own suit, claiming elder abuse and undue influence, arguing I had manipulated a sick grandmother. They even had witnesses, my Aunt Sarah, Uncle Mike, and Cousin Jennifer, all willing to lie on the stand to protect the family secret. They're trying to create reasonable doubt, Taylor warned. If they can make you look bad enough, maybe a jury sympathizes. The public attacks ramped up. Miller posted a long statement claiming I was using forged documents to steal our inheritance and got hundreds of shares. I watched my name and reputation crumble in real time under a tidal wave of misinformation. Let them, Taylor said, with a cruel confidence I was beginning to share. We have something better. Monday morning, the court hearing on their undue influence claim. My parents' lawyer presented his case, painting me as a greedy manipulator who isolated an elderly, confused woman. When he finished, Richard stood up. Your Honor, I have video evidence. Richard played the clip on the courtroom screen. It was security footage from grandmother's house, 3 months before she died. My parents arrived. The audio was crystal clear. Mom, we need to talk about your will, Dad demanded. She's been caring for me while you count my money, grandmother shot back. This conversation is over.
If you don't change that will, we won't be here for your final days. Then leave, grandmother rasped, her voice brittle but firm. They left, slamming the door. The courtroom was utterly silent. Richard played 2 more clips, including one of my mother sitting beside grandmother's deathbed, ignoring medications and only asking about the will. The judge's expression was hard, final. It appears, he said slowly, that the undue influence went the other direction. Motion dismissed. And I'm issuing sanctions against the plaintiffs for filing a frivolous suit. My parents' lawyer went white. Outside, the court was chaos. Reporters, alerted by the civil suit, swarmed. The cameras caught my parents trying to flee through a side exit. "Did you really threaten to skip your mother's final days?" a reporter shouted. They rushed to their car, exposed and shamed. By the next day, the consequence machine had fully engaged. The $340,000 trust transfer was completed to my account. A criminal trial date was set for forgery and theft. The $73,000 civil suit was moving forward into the discovery phase. Dr. Harrison was under official investigation, his medical license suspended. Miller's social media, his entire platform for validation, was destroyed as friends abandoned him after seeing the raw, unedited video evidence. I thought watching the video evidence would be the hardest part, seeing my grandmother defend me against her own daughter one more time. But what happened 20 minutes after we left the courthouse, when my phone started ringing with a number I hadn't seen in 5 years, showed me the betrayal had one more layer I hadn't anticipated.
7 months after the courthouse verdict, the consequences were specific, painful, and absolute. The criminal case closed in March. Miller pled guilty to avoid jail time, resulting in 2 years of probation, $15,000 restitution, and a permanent fraud conviction. My parents, charged as accessories, pled no contest, receiving 1 year of probation and joint liability for the restitution. The civil suit was the true engine of destruction. They couldn't afford discovery, so they settled out of court, agreeing to pay the $52,000 over 5 years. To make the first payment, they sold the house I grew up in, the one with Miller's towering trophy shrine and my single, forgotten corner photo, got a sold sign in April. They moved 40 minutes away, downsizing from 2,400 square feet to a cramped 800 square foot apartment. Miller's life followed. The criminal conviction made any decent job impossible. He took a night shift job stocking shelves at a local grocery store. He deleted all his social media and disappeared from the world he'd spent his life trying to impress. My mother's real estate license was suspended. She took a job at a call center. My father stayed at the auto dealership, but his reputation was destroyed. The social fallout was brutal. Aunt Sarah, who had testified against me, stopped returning their calls after seeing the video evidence. Cousin Jennifer unfriended them, her profile picture now featuring me and grandmother with the caption, "Family is who shows up, not who shows up for money." The narrative of the greedy sister was gone, replaced by the truth of the parasitic family. But the consequences didn't stop with the guilty. My cousin Emma, Miller's age, had her engagement broken off because her fiancé's family saw the news and questioned the Anderson family values. "I didn't do anything," she tearfully told me over the phone, "but they think we're all like Miller." She was right. She was paying for their choices. I sent her a genuine apology, and she told me she was changing her last name. Then there was my 12-year-old cousin Jake. Kids at school found the news articles and started calling him Scammer Cousin. His parents had to pull him out and enroll him across town. I sent his family an anonymous cashier's check for $5,000 for the fresh start he deserves. I used the trust money to do exactly what grandmother wanted. I paid off my car and put a down payment on a small, quiet house. Nothing ostentatious, just mine. I then started a scholarship fund in grandmother's name, providing $25,000 annually for physical therapy students who are the first in their families to pursue healthcare. The rental income now goes entirely into savings. I was promoted to lead physical therapist.
I'm dating Marcus, a supportive teacher who knows the whole story and doesn't judge. Life got quieter, simpler, better. 14 months later, Saturday morning, I was in the produce section of a grocery store picking out apples. I turned the corner. Miller. We both froze. He was wearing the store uniform, his name tag identifying him as staff. "Can I help you find anything?" he asked, the customer service drone automatic. Then he saw me. Van. Miller. The silence between us was heavy, charged with all the years of damage. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice quiet, stripped of all bravado. "For all of it. The forgery, the theft, the years of taking from you. I'm sorry." I studied his face. He looked thin, tired, older than 32. "Okay." "That's it? Okay?" "What do you want me to say? That I forgive you?" I thought about the 2 decades of being invisible. "I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever." He nodded slowly. "I understand. But I don't hate you either." He looked up, a flicker of genuine hope in his eyes. "You're here. Working. Actually working. That's more than you did in 6 years living at home." "Probation officer requires it." Then quieter. "But I'm glad for it. I was wasting my life." I picked up my apples and started to walk away. "Van?" I turned. "Are you happy?" His eyes were genuine, no manipulation, just a question. "I'm getting there." "That's good," he said, nodding. "You deserve that. You always did." I walked away, didn't look back. I don't know if I'm strong or cruel, justified or vengeful. The trust fund changed my life, but it destroyed theirs. Miller is working, but he has a conviction that will follow him forever. My parents lost everything they valued. At what point does justice become revenge? I genuinely don't know. But today, I have a life that's mine, a house I own, a career I built, people who value me without conditions, and I don't owe anyone anything. That has to count for something.
The consequences are real, but the questions linger. Now, I want to hear from you. Question 1. Here's what I need to know. If you were at that Sunday dinner, if you watched my father put legal documents on the table and say, "Sign this or leave the family," what would you have done? Option A, stayed quiet, not your family, not your business. Felt uncomfortable but said nothing. Option B, pulled me aside after dinner, said something supportive privately, maybe offered advice. Option C, spoke up right there. "Wait, this isn't right. You can't force someone to give up their inheritance." Be honest in the comments. Which one are you? When you see something that looks wrong, what makes you speak up? What makes you stay silent? Drop your answer A, B, or C. No judgment. Question 2. Let's talk about what I did. Did I go too far? They stole from me for 20 years, forged my signature. Where's the line between holding people accountable and destroying them? Option C. I should have stopped at criminal charges. The civil suit for 20 years of theft was too much. That's when it became revenge instead of justice. Option E. I did exactly what I needed to do. Protected myself, honored my grandmother, held them accountable. The criminal charges were justice, but the civil suit for $52,000? That forced them to sell their house and downsize their entire lives. Was that justice or revenge? Comment your answer. Question 3. Here's what keeps me up at night. Miller was wrong, but he was also enabled his entire life. Did he deserve a permanent fraud conviction that destroys his career? And what about Emma, my cousin who lost her engagement, or Jake, the 12-year-old getting bullied because of our last name? They didn't do anything wrong.
But they're paying for my choice to expose everything publicly. At what point does my justice become someone else's collateral damage? I don't have the answer. Maybe you do. Comment below. Question 4. Have you ever had someone in your family who was always chosen over you? The sibling who got everything while you got nothing? The one where your parents said, "Can't you just help them?" Or, "You're strong, you'll figure it out." What was your moment? The day you realized you had to stop trying to earn equal treatment? Share your story. If this story resonated, if you've ever been the responsible one while someone else got handed everything, hit like right now. Subscribe for more real stories about toxic family dynamics, golden child syndrome, and what it actually costs to stand up for yourself. This is about more than inheritance. It's about toxic family dynamics, financial exploitation, the real cost of setting boundaries, and learning that protecting yourself isn't betrayal. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop letting people use you, even when it means watching their world collapse. My grandmother told me, "Don't let them bully you." I spent 28 years letting them. Then I stopped. I don't know if that makes me strong or cruel, justified or vengeful. What I know is this. I'm not their ATM anymore. I'm not the invisible one who exists to make Miller's life easier. I'm just Ivy, building a life Grandma would be proud of. And some days, that's enough. I'm still figuring it out, but I'm figuring it out in a house I own, with money I earned, surrounded by people who chose me. Thanks for listening. Drop a comment with your story. We're not selfish. We're just done.